Good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Purdy. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Briscoe Center for American History, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to tonight's program on the photography of Ben Martin. The center is the proud home of the Ben Martin Photographic Archive, which was donated by our guest this evening, Kathryn Leigh Scott, Martin's lifelong friend, former wife, and business partner, and she's going to tell you more about their relationship. Ben Martin is best known for his work with Time magazine. He became the magazine's first full-time staff photographer in 1957, and in his more than 3 decades as a photojournalist, primarily with Time Life, he covered a wide range of subjects, and we're going to get a sampling of some of those tonight, including politics, arts, business, sports, international conflict. We could go on and on. The archive is comprised of negatives, prints, slides, and correspondence from the entirety of Martin's career, not just as a photojournalist, but also his work for corporate clients and freelance. We have a sample of his outstanding work as our newest exhibition, and you are all invited to join us after the program for a reception and an opportunity to see the exhibit. Before I introduce our speakers, I just have 2 short announcements. One is to invite you to join us on April 30th for a program with photographer and physician Matthew Nathans, whose extensive archive is also part of our photography collection. The event celebrates the Briscoe Center's newest book, Light in Dark Places, which is a photographic retrospective of Nathans' work. And you'll notice tonight at the reception that our main gallery is closed for the installation of our next exhibit, which is Stars, Stripes, and Symbols, America at 250. It will officially open to the public on June 2nd, and it's part of the American Experiment, which is a series of programs and exhibitions we're doing in collaboration with the LBJ Library. So I hope you come back over the summer to take a look at our exhibit and also what's going to be on display at the LBJ. So now I get to introduce our speakers. We're here to hear about Kathryn Leigh Scott and her connection to Ben Martin, but she herself is an absolutely fascinating person. She's had 2 main careers, writing and acting. She grew up on a farm in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, and upon graduation from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, she landed the ingenue lead role in the classic Gothic daytime drama, Dark Shadows. Okay. We've got some vampire fans in the audience. She also starred in the 1971 MGM feature, House of Dark Shadows. She played not 1, 2, or 3, she played 4 roles in the series. Maggie Evans, Josette Dupre, Lady Kitty Hampshire, and Rachel Drummond. I think I'm going to name my next dog Lady Kitty Hampshire. I think that's a good name. Her acting credits are extensive, and they include a lengthy theatrical run with James Stewart in Harvey in London's West End. She has appeared in many films, television series, and miniseries, including, and this is just to name a few, The Blacklist, Lifetime's Deadly Vows, The Goldbergs, Star Trek Next Generation, The Last Days of Patton, and Chandlertown. And she was a series regular with Brian Dennehy in Big Seamus, Little Seamus. Feature film appearances include Providence, The Great Gatsby, Brannigan, The Greek Tycoon, A Rainy Day in New York, and a reprisal of her original role in Dark Shadows in the Johnny Depp Tim Burton revival film that was done. As an author, her nonfiction work includes Dark Shadows Memories, The Bunny Years, which is a 25-year history of the Playboy clubs as told through the women who worked as bunnies, and her memoir, Last Dance at the Savoy. Her novels include Dark Passages, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, Jinxed, and September Girl. And Kathryn has been a publishing maven. She and Ben Martin launched Pomegranate Press to publish books about the entertainment industry, including guidebooks, biographies, textbooks, and coffee table art books. I think something like 50 titles through Pomegranate Press. And we should all congratulate her because she's actually a newlywed. In 2025, she married author and journalist Patrick Oster, who is here with us tonight as well. Dr. Don Carlton, for those of you who don't know, is the founding executive director of the Briscoe Center and the J.R. Parton Chair in the Archives of American History here at UT Austin. He's a specialist in American political and news media history and the author of 15 books, including Red Scare, Conversations with Cronkite, Struggle for Justice, 4 Decades of Civil Rights Photography, and The Governor and the Colonel, a dual biography of William P. Hobby and Evita Culp-Hobby. He's also the executive producer of 2 PBS documentaries, When I Rise and Cactus Jack, Lone Star on Capitol Hill. Please join me for welcoming our speakers.
Thank you, Erin. I want to thank Kathryn for the gift of this wonderful collection. The Ben Martin Archive is just fabulous. And one of the great things that struck me when you first contacted me, it was 8 years ago. I looked it up.
It is? Oh,
Yeah.
My gosh.
She called me up and said, would there be any chance that we'd have any interest in this? And it took me about 2 seconds to say, yes, we are very interested. And so it all worked out. And so one of the great things about Ben's collection is it's so broad, and the topics that he covered is really a journalist with a camera. And his work is just outstanding. And we've built this news media and photojournalism archive here. We have 10 million photographs now, largest collection of photographs at any institution outside of the Library of Congress. And Ben Martin's a big part of it.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate your decision to entrust us with that legacy.
Oh.
So the other thing is that Kathryn is a very good friend of mine, and she is also a member of our Ambassadors Council, which is our group of supporters and friends that are very important to us. So I thank you for that as well. And what we're going to do tonight, we advertise this as a conversation. What we're really going to do is talk to photographs. We're going to show you some photographs, and we're going to react to those photographs. Kathryn Leigh has lots of stories about some of those photographs, and I think all of them are true, right?
I would
Okay.
never spoil a good story for the want of a bit of embroidery.
Exactly.
Right.
But you have to understand, we're a history research center, so I'm very touchy about that.
I'm an actor.
So you wanted before we start looking at photographs.
I will. Well, first of all, I've got a lot to thank you for, and I do appreciate your whole staff here. It's wonderful. And I thank you, Erin, for, I like to describe myself in terms of Ben as I was his girlfriend, his wife, his camera caddy, his unpaid staff for a long time. And in fact, most of the time when, the photographs you're going to see were taken. And I must thank you, because when Ben passed away in 2017, it fell to me to manage his archive. And that was a daunting responsibility, because all of those negatives and contact sheets, and I knew that he had a big collection, but I had nowhere near an idea that it was that extensive. So I thank you, and I see Alison Beck there. I have to thank you, because this is not what I do. I'm an actor and a writer. I'm not a photographer. So I really leaned heavily on everybody here to give me advice on what I was doing. And well, first of all, I would love to tell you a little bit about how I met Ben, because I could not possibly have known back in 1964 when I first met him that I would be in this position today. I was a scholarship student at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and new to New York. And I fell into this amazing fluke of an opportunity to do a fashion shoot for Time magazine, and it paid a whopping $50, which happened to be $9 less than my monthly rent for a garden apartment on the Upper East Side. And those were the days, 1964. And when I came out of the dressing room, there was Ben, and he He was tall, handsome, but he was wearing a trench coat, the collar turned up, he had cameras slung on his shoulders, and he had a tan in November because he told me that he had just got off a flight from Venezuela where he'd been covering an election. And then he was going to photograph me. And then after the shoot, he gave me a lift in his racing car green MGB GT, so I was totally dazzled. But the thing that I mention all of this because these guys, all photographers and photojournalists back in the 60s, from David Bailey to Richard Avedon to all of the guys that you have here at the Briscoe Center, they were rock stars. I mean, they were living such a life, traveling all over the world in the middle of everything, covering wars, fashion, politics. They knew everybody. So it was quite an introduction to a life I could not have imagined. May I tell you a little bit about his background? Oh, right. Ben was born September 16th, 1930 in Salisbury, North Carolina. And he fell in love with photography because his father, who was a newspaperman and an attorney, later a judge, gave him this little Bakelite box camera. And by the time Ben was 15, he had started a high school news bureau nationally, and he was also on the staff of his hometown newspaper, the Salisbury Post. And he would get rousted out of bed in the middle of the night by the feds, the revenue guys who wanted him to tag along while they busted up, a moonshine still. Or the sheriff's department would pick him up to photograph a car wreck out on the interstate. And by the age of 17, he became the youngest National Press Photographers Association member, which is amazing at 17. And a year later, he was at Ohio University, caught the eye of W. Eugene Smith. Everybody must know him. He's a celebrated photographer, and became a mentor. And through him, he met Wilson Hicks, who was the executive photo editor at Life magazine, who offered him an internship when he got out of graduation at Ohio. And by the time he got to New York, Wilson Hicks had retired, but Henry Luce happened to notice that Ben, who was by then just an intern, always had a camera on his shoulder. So we're going to show a couple of photographs, and we can start right away. But Ben was already published in Time magazine before Henry Luce made him the first staff photographer. Some of these pictures were taken in 1953. So to wrap up, Ben, for the next 33 years, photographed for Time, Life, People, Sports Illustrated, and Fortune. And I am just so proud that he has his collection here, because it's Don who's pointed out the historical significance of these photographs, and not just the photographs, but the stories behind them. So that's what we're going to talk about.
And for those of you who are too young to know who Henry Luce was, he was the founder of the Time Life empire, so that if he saw you and liked you, that was he was a formidable guy. And so that's one thing. The other thing I want to mention before we show any other photographs, we have this particular photograph up here because it was taken at Selma during the march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. And that was the final march. There were other marches. The one that's most famous, of course, is when John Lewis and his other civil rights protesters were beaten bloody. But at any rate, this photograph was actually taken by Charles Moore, who was one of the leading pioneers of civil rights photography. And so the great thing about this is not only do we have Ben Martin's archive, but we have Charles Moore's entire archive.
And we should say that Charlie and Ben were really close friends. They covered that Selma march together, but they were both Southern boys. You know, Charlie was from Alabama, and Ben was from North Carolina, and
right.
they were supportive of the civil rights movement from the get-go. So, and they were lifelong friends right up until Charlie passed away.
Well, that's one of the reasons the Ben Martin Archive is so important. But it links so well with some other archives that we have too. So it's a strength that we've built on, because not only do we have Charles Moore's photo archive, the entire archive, but the person who was famous for taking the photographs of the original march where John Lewis was beaten and so forth was named Spider Martin. And Spider Martin, we have his entire archive as well. And then another that links into some of this work. I see this photograph, and we're going to look at it in a minute, of Martin Luther King, but we have the Flip Schulke photo archive, too, which has the largest collection of individual photographs of Martin Luther King in existence. And we have that entire archive here as well. So it's good company.
It meshes.
Good company. All right, well, let's, I've been given, I don't have a license for this, but let's just see if it works.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Well, that is Coretta Scott King kissing Martin Luther King's cheek, and that's in Birmingham when they completed the march, and it's just a fabulous photograph. He'd just given a speech, and it's just lovely. Yeah. Oh, and this is one of the photographs. This was taken in 1953. It's Queen Elizabeth, and it was within the year that after she had her coronation. And Ben was not yet a staff photographer, but there he was with his camera on his shoulder, and he caught this beautiful photograph of Queen Elizabeth, and this was during a motorcade down Fifth Avenue.
She looks so young.
Yes, yeah. And Truman had just lost, Eisenhower, it was Eisenhower.
Yeah.
Truman had just gone
Looks like
out of
she's in the
office.
bubble mobile.
I know. It's just a lovely photograph. Yeah. Oh, and do you recognize him? It's David Cornwall, better known as John le Carré. Ben shot these photographs for People magazine, and he spent considerable amount of time with le Carré, or with Cornwall, down in where he lived in Cornwall, in the south of England, and photographed him. He was on his yacht, out fishing, hiking, all sorts of things. But this is my favorite. Here he is catching a train into New York with a briefcase, and it's just, doesn't he look like a spy? He could be George Smiley.
You know what I like about it is it's about as near as you can get to a candid photograph. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's posed, sort of, but it's really the look on his face. It's almost like, why are you bothering me? And it's just not a characteristic kind of typical shots that you have of a famous personality. They're usually more posed.
Yeah, Ben was really good at portraiture. And so most of these photographs that we're showing, including this one of Queen Elizabeth and of Martin Luther King and Coretta. I mean, again, just wonderful portraiture.
Oh, this is one of my favorites, by the way. Go ahead. Go ahead. Tell us about it.
Well, you're not going to recognize this fellow unless you're of a certain age. But if you saw the film with Tom Hanks, the Bridge of Spies, and it was Mark Rylance who played Rudolph Abel, and he was traded for the U-2 pilot Gary Powers. This picture was, and it was on the Gleinica Bridge on the River Spee, but it was taken in 1962.
Rudolph Abel was one of the top spies for the Soviet Union, and when he was sought when they finally captured him and put him in jail in prison. That was one of the main things that the Soviets wanted. They wanted him back. And then when the U-2 was shot down over the Soviet Union and caused Eisenhower so much trouble, in fact, collapsed a summit meeting that Eisenhower was supposed to have with de Gaulle and Khrushchev. And the Soviets wanted him back so badly, you know, that they gave up Gary Francis Powers, who was the pilot. And so I like that photograph a lot.
Oh, Malcolm X. Ben photographed Malcolm X quite often up in his Harlem office. But this picture here was at a press conference. It was at the Sheraton Hotel, and it was just a year before he was killed. And he made a really interesting statement at this press conference. He said, while I am no longer a member of the Islam Nation, I'm still a Muslim, and I support the separation of black and whites and a return to the African homeland. A remarkable statement. And I asked Ben about that, and he said, you know, no two men could have been more different than Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And yet Ben said that he had this expectation that they were growing closer. And now Don has filled me in on a piece of information that maybe shows some prescience on Ben's part.
Absolutely. Yeah, they were, you know, Malcolm X was having private meetings, confidential meetings with Martin Luther King, and they were communicating and trying to find common ground. He's probably, that photograph that Ben took of him there, that's when he when he was announcing that he was leaving the black Muslims, or
the Islam Nation.
Yeah, he was leaving the Islam Nation, and that's probably when he had really signed his death warrant.
Yeah.
Was when he made this announcement and did that.
Yeah, he was killed not quite a year later. But what I love about this photograph is that Ben always described him as looking very grim and with two big bodyguards and very serious. So for Ben to have caught that smiling picture of him, and he looks a little like Denzel Washington.
Oh, how about that?
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, another great picture. Another great picture. Tell us about this one.
Oh, well, this is Raul Castro, Fidel's brother, and that is Che Guevara. And this is an interesting story that starts with the Bay of Pigs, because Ben and a Time magazine reporter were on 24-hour call with the CIA to be embedded with them during the Bay of Pigs operation. And when the CIA abruptly pulled out, it caused Ben a lot of problem, because Ben had already photographed Carlos Prio, who was the president in exile. He was living in Florida. Ben had taken a photograph of him, and the plan was that during the operation, there would be planes flying over Cuba dropping leaflets, and they would be of the president. And Ben's name was not meant to be on that leaflet, but there were hundreds of them that were dropped and, of course, collected. So in 1964, on the anniversary of Cuban independence, and it was a celebration of Jose Marti, Ben arrived along with other journalists, but he had the feeling when he arrived that he was really being watched. And yet he was allowed to, we don't have that second photo. He was allowed to photograph Fidel Castro playing baseball.
Oh, that's coming up next.
Okay.
That's next.
You know, looking very relaxed and happy. And of course he photographed these fellas during one of Castro's, long speeches. But the day after that photograph was taken, Ben was on the streets of Havana photographing something, and he was picked up by the police, and he was hauled off to, Ben described it as a barn, and he was stripped completely and put in a refrigerated room, and he was interrogated by Che Guevara. And it was all because of those leaflets that had been dropped. And the only reason why he was released that evening, or late that night, is because he had been invited to the Swiss consulate for a party, and he didn't show up. And he was, and there was a reason why he was supposed to be there. So they started looking around and very quickly realized what had happened. And Ben was found, released, and brought back to the Swiss embassy. And here's the odd thing. Che Guevara was there and laughed his head off. Anyway, it just makes for a story.
Our collections include Che Guevara's Cuban cigar box that he presented to Richard Goodwin, who was Doris Kearns Goodwin's husband. And Che met Richard Goodwin secretly at a conference in South America that he wasn't supposed to be meeting with Cubans, and he was working for John F. Kennedy. And Che gave him this big box of Cuban cigars, and it's an official Cuban government cigar box. Okay, it didn't have La Vera on it or something, you know, and the seal of Cuba is on it. We have that box, but Goodwin got back to Washington and had an appointment with his boss, John F. Kennedy, and came in, and Kennedy said, well, we've heard that as you did what we told you not to do, and you met with the Cuban, someone from the Cuban government. And so he pulled out the cigar box, and Kennedy pulled it out of his hands and opened it up, and then took them all out and put them in his top drawer of his desk, shut it, and then he gave him one and the box. And that's the reason we have the box. We don't have the cigar because he smoked it. But anyway, the other quick thing I want to say about this picture, and Ben, that's a pretty amazing thing. Raul was he was not the celebrity type, and he was not really wanting to be photographed very often. And this is a fairly unusual photograph of Raul.
It is, yeah.
And he's catching him there, and to catch him with Che on top of that.
I know.
And you may see there's a little bit of a cigar stub in Che's mouth. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but he's got there. Here's the baseball.
I love this photograph because, and it is true that, if Eisenhower and then JFK had handled things a little bit differently, Fidel Castro would probably have been, either a baseball player, which is what he really wanted to do, but he lived up in Harlem. He spent a lot of time, and he was an admirer, really, of the United States, and it's kind of a shame what happened.
A lot of historians blame Raul because he was the communist.
Yeah, he was yes, he was. So. But otherwise, things could have gone so differently, and I'm glad we have it in this selection because Cuba is so much in the news now. I mean,
it's an amazing photograph.
Yeah.
Another good one.
Yeah, this is Glassboro, and this was Kosygin and Johnson, and this was a big. You probably know more about it than I do.
Well, it was an amazing. Michael Gillette's here. He probably knows a lot more about it than I do. But they were, Johnson was trying to work in some way with the Soviet Union to get something going with Vietnam, and using the Soviets as a mediator with the communists in North Vietnam. And so they worked out this summit, which was very unusual. And they went to this community college or junior college, Glassboro College. The guy in between is a very famous, he's in so many photographs of Soviet
Victor.
leaders. Yeah, Victor.
His name is Victor, and he was everybody's favorite interpreter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When you see pictures of Khrushchev and he's meeting with any Americans, he's always there. And Kosygin, of course, is the man on the left. And he was technically the head of state of the Soviet Union. Is the reason he came and met with Johnson. But of course, Brezhnev, as the head of the party, had the power. But Johnson wanted to meet with the head of state.
Yeah. Oh, and this is 1953. It's Eisenhower at Catawba University in North Carolina. And again, Ben with his camera on his shoulder took this picture, and it was published in Time magazine, but it was before he was a staff photographer.
It's a great picture.
Yeah. Oh, and this one, well, self-evident. It's Jacqueline with the children at the funeral, and you know, there were so many photographers that were, you know, photographing at the funeral, but staking out a place. And aside from this photograph, because it was after this one that Ben went high up in the cathedral, and this was one of his Life magazine. Life magazine picked this picture up because nobody else had it, but most of Ben's pictures were taken of the family arriving, and Rose and Teddy, Bobby, all of them coming into the church and so on. Can we lead into this, the story about the debates and so on?
Oh, we're going there now.
Yeah.
Actually, we're going there. That's the next one. That's the next one.
That's the next one.
Yeah.
This is Ben photographing Richard Nixon at the first televised presidential debate in 1960. The photograph was taken by Paul Schutzer. And Paul Schutzer was a Life magazine photographer who was later killed in the Six-Day War. Wonderful photographer, and he and Ben were very close friends. And Time and Life arranged for these two guys, Paul Schutzer and Ben Martin, to be the only two photographers backstage during the first debate, and they arrived early. And they were there when Jacqueline, who was very pregnant, and Senator Kennedy arrived. And then Paul and Ben sat and chatted with Jacqueline while JFK was off, with his staff. But Richard Nixon did not arrive until about 40 minutes before the event, before the debate. And Jacqueline Kennedy had brought a freshly ironed shirt for Jack to change into, but Nixon, who had pneumonia, had been in hospital, and was recovering, and also was lamenting that he had lost time on the campaign trail, actually fit 2 campaign stops in before getting to the studio for this important debate. He arrived disheveled and no time for a shave. He had a heavy beard, and had to borrow a shirt from one of his staff. And and the story goes that people who were listening to the debate, and that was probably most of the American people listened to the debate on the radio, thought that Richard Nixon had won. But it was the people watching on television who saw Richard Nixon looking, who had lost weight and looked sweaty and shifty-eyed, as people said, lost the weight. In any case, when Ben's photograph of Richard Nixon appeared in Time magazine, Richard Nixon blamed Time magazine, and Ben in particular, he said, for losing the election. I don't think that's the case, but it was maybe a factor. What's interesting is that Richard Nixon held it against Ben forever after, and during the 1968 campaign, Ben was on his, on the campaign trail with Nixon. Made it very, very difficult. Ben had already photographed Goldwater, Johnson, Humphrey, all of them, the night of their, when they got the nomination. He tried to do that with Richard Nixon, and Nixon made it impossible. He actually ruined a cover a cover of Time magazine just out of pique. So
Ben was probably on the blacklist.
oh, he was very much on the blacklist, and it didn't help that he then asked to be transferred to Humphrey's campaign. So after the election in '68, Ben, along with quite a few other journalists, moved to Europe. Ben requested a transfer to the Rome Bureau. So in 1985, a good 25 years after that debate, we were living in London, and Nixon, of course, was no longer in office, but the phone rang, and I answered, and I heard this voice say, "Oh, this is Dick Nixon here. Is Ben Martin there? I'd like to talk to him if he's available." And when he got Ben on the phone, he said, "Can we let bygones be bygones? I like some work that I saw you do for Life, and I was wondering, I've got a book coming out, I'd like you to do the jacket picture." So Ben flew to New York, and Nixon wanted to be photographed at 8 a.m. So Ben had to be there setting up lights a couple hours earlier. And then he heard this buzzing sound coming from Nixon's private bathroom. And then Nixon stepped out with an electric razor in his hand, and he said to Ben, "I'm not going to let you get me twice." So that's 25 years later that he came up with that. To me, it's just a remarkable insight to somebody's character. It was incredible.
Particularly with Nixon, because he was like an elephant. He never forgot.
Never forgot.
You know,
And Ben never disliked Nixon, but he just felt that he'd never met anybody more uncomfortable in his skin. And they became, I mean, there's some lovely photographs of them with their arms around each other.
And I guess that's in his law office, or
that's in his Manhattan
or
law
maybe
office,
just the presidential.
and that's Ben taking the photograph.
Yeah.
It was his
Absolutely.
assistant that took the photograph. But quite remarkable, because it wasn't the last time that Ben then photographed Nixon. He photographed him, for all of his official portraits after '85.
That's fascinating. Do you know if now had he done his memoir before this, or was this for another one of Nixon's?
Was this not for his memoir?
Was it
I'm
for it?
picturing the cover.
Yeah, because I can't recall that. I mean,
I'm picturing the cover because I've got the book.
but it was for one of his, at least one of his books.
Yeah,
right.
he photographed him for a couple of his
Because
books.
he did some books after that as well. You know.
Yeah, 1985. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so this next one we
Oh,
have
this
here.
is a very poignant photograph. Ben photographed Willy Brandt, the Chancellor of Germany, many, many times, including for a Time magazine Man of the Year cover. And he was traveling with Willy Brandt here when, and I'm sure that Willy Brandt knew he was going to do it, but nobody else did. But he fell to his knees in Warsaw at that war memorial. And I'm sure you remember, it was just an incredible moment. And
Well, it's important, I think, too. It's 1970, long before the communist government fell in Poland. I mean, and it's also shocked many Germans.
Yes, it shocked many Germans. I think it was controversial, but Ben had huge respect for Willy Brandt, and for good reason.
Some good photographs of him that he took in the collection, actually.
Yeah. Oh, you're not. Does anybody know who they are? Tom Farabee and Tibbets. Ben was a pilot, and he also spoke Japanese because he had been stationed there. And this is pilot Tibbets and bombardier Tom Farabee, and they dropped the A-bomb on Hiroshima. And Ben did the cover story on Hiroshima for Time magazine. And nobody had photographed either of them. They did not seek the spotlight at all. But Ben tracked down Farabee through his babysitter. Ben happened to find out who his babysitter was.
There's a journalist for
and
you, right?
and the babysitter put in a good word, and I think Ben knew the mother of the babysitter. It was a complicated story, but in any case, Farabee didn't necessarily want to talk or certainly be photographed. But because Ben was a pilot, because he had such terrific knowledge of of everything, he kind of hit it off with him. And at that point, Farabee said, I haven't seen Tibbets in a long time, and he got in touch with him. And then Ben tracked down a B-29. And I think it was somewhere here in Texas at an airfield for one of those air shows.
Yeah, there was a light lamented Confederate Air Force here in Texas.
And the two men were altogether happy to be photographed in the nose of the B-29.
Yeah, that was probably they had a workable, flyable B-29 there, and so that is probably it.
Yeah.
And that plane could still fly.
Yeah. So it's just a wonderful photograph, and you've got the next one that caused even more trouble.
Yeah, this is a good one too.
This one is a good one. This is his name is Commander Fujito, and he was the leader of the second wave of the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And Ben tracked him down and then found a Mitsubishi Zero in which so that he could photograph him there. And then he pulled something that I can't believe that he did it, but Ben managed to get Commander Fujitsu aboard a destroyer in San Diego. The commander, when he found out who Ben had brought on board, couldn't believe it. And yet he was so stunned by the historical significance. And it turned out that Commander Fujitsu, to his credit, had kind of made amends, I don't know how to say that. He was apologetic. In any case, there's a series of photographs of the commander of the destroyer standing next to.
Do you know where they got the Zero? Did Ben ever say anything about that?
Oh, I wouldn't know. But again, these air shows have
probably.
And they're enthusiasts.
In fact, this may have been the same place in South Texas where they did the.
They flew. I know they flew one of the planes in for the photograph, and again Farabee and Tibbets to meet him as well. Is again historical. This is Ben in Angola, and he's. Very few people knew that there was this Angolan war. It was Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau that Ben traveled through, first from the Portuguese side, and then he ran into Amilcar Cabral and Holden Roberto. He ran into Holden Roberto in Luanda, who said, since you've been traveling with, the Portuguese forces, you should come and travel with the rebel forces. And these two men were head of two different factions. So Ben covered the exact same territory with the rebels that he had with the Portuguese. And there's another photograph of him with the Portuguese soldiers. But and it was a dangerous thing to do. He was with this unit, I think, and it was just a ragtag army. They were using old Kalashnikovs that they found, and whatever piece of clothing had a button on it became, a uniform, and it was just a ragtag unit. And he was out in the bush with them, and probably some of the same people that he had been traveling with, with the Portuguese forces shot at them, and they all fell into this river and hid in the weeds. Ben was grazed on the shoulder, and he lost all of his cameras except for a Leica that he held above his head. But again, it's just an amazing.
Well, it's a
war
real
story.
photographic coup. Who took the picture, though? Do you know?
Probably just somebody that Ben handed his Leica to.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, that's a real coup, though, because he was able to cover both sides of the.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was the only photographer that did. So here's what happened. Ben spent something like 3 or 4 months on this story, and the CIA, State Department, went to Time magazine and asked them not to print it. I don't know that happened very often, but this story was never published. You've got tons of pictures. I mean, 3 or 4 months of photographs.
Yeah.
And
That's
through all of this area. This story was never published.
But see, that's a classic example of why we collect these archives. Because there were many times a photojournalist would go out on assignment, and of course, nearly always, only 1 or 2 photographs are going to be published out of a whole series. And some photo editor, not the photographer, makes the decision about what's going to be published or not. So you've got tons of stuff that's never been published, and so that's one of our missions, is to take that material and preserve it and make it available for teaching and research. Yeah. So that's a good example there. We've got this whole thing on the Angolan, rebellion against the Portuguese government.
Yeah.
And it was never published.
Right. See, it's funny because I remember the stories from Ben, but yeah, it was Amilcar Cabral in Kinshasa and the other fellow in Luanda, and they joined forces to get Ben to cover the rebel side. But I think it was because of the Vietnam War.
Well, do you have a date for this? I don't know, but I don't think we have a date. But I think that the reason that happened is that they were being supplied by the Soviet Union, the Klitschko. And that was during a period of time when the United States was trying to reach detente with the Soviet Union. And the story would have had to be about how the Russians were, providing arms and so forth.
Oh, hence the okay. Hence the Kalashnikovs.
The reason they had those kinds of arms.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that would be the reason, because it would mess up the diplomacy that was going on at that time.
Yeah. Oh, do you know who this is? It's Harper Lee. It's Harper Lee, and she was such a close friend of Ben's. She was from Mobile, Alabama, and she was a neighbor of Ben's in New York. He photographed her quite a few times, and Truman Capote was also a good friend. So look at her. I just love this picture. Ben made her a cup of tea. She's smoking a cigarette. She's totally relaxed, wearing her pearls.
She was not, surprisingly, she was not often photographed.
No.
She wasn't really a publicity hound.
No, but there's all of these photographs, and as I say, she was a neighbor, but she had 2 different places that she lived in, and Ben photographed her in both. So quite often, I'm asked about these photos, from Getty and so on, because they are rare.
Yeah, they're very
she was
rare.
Not photographed.
She was not. No, she did not seek
Yeah.
personal publicity. Well, this is new. This is a fun. This next photograph is a fun one here.
All right. Well, John Cleese is a really close friend. He's been a friend since 72 or 3. And Ben photographed them many times. But this one I love. He got them all in an elevator with an umbrella. And I love it because
Monty Python.
yeah, they're all of the pythons are there. You know, Graham was still alive, and yeah, so it's just a fun picture.
Yeah, Michael Palin. They're all there. Eric
yeah.
Idle is there on
Yeah.
next. Yeah. So well, I'm going to open up the floor to questions here.
We got through it and remembered all of the names. How about that? I was so concerned. I wrote down some. I was so concerned I'd forget.
Was there
a few.
anything that you want to add to before we ask for questions?
Well, oh, I will. You don't. I don't think realize. We were looking at the photographs out in the back in the exhibit, and there's one of Twiggy and her hairdresser boyfriend Justin Villeneuve. Do you remember Twiggy? Well, Ben did the story on Swinging London, and the story behind Swinging London is that there were three guys, a bureau chief, a photographer, and a reporter who did not want to leave London. And Ben got in touch with Charlie Jackson back at Time magazine, and he said, "Guys, this place is really swinging." And they sold him on the idea of doing a story on London, and of course the Time magazine story was called Swinging London, and. Anyway, Ben photographed Twiggy and Justin Villeneuve, and they're wonderful photographs, except there are no negatives, and there's no negatives, but there were some contact sheets kind of stuck together, and I kind of carefully peeled them apart, and I photographed them.
Oh, good for you. Thank you.
I asked somebody here to ask why that picture looks funky, but that's, yeah.
Well,
I mean, I could not let those
have
go. They were so wonderful. There were about 6 contact sheets, and they were just wonderful pictures. And nobody exemplifies for me, you know, the fashion scene, Carnaby Street, Tuffin and Foal, and Biba, and all of those things that were happening in London then. Nothing says it like Twiggy. She was just such a delight.
Well, your reaction, now we have the photographs. We wouldn't have them otherwise. So, questions? Anyone have questions? Back over here. Oh, David?
And you mentioned where the political decision not to publish the article, but do photographers like Ben have ethical dilemmas, A, as to taking a photograph, or B, as to publishing a photograph? Does that come up in his career, where he has to grapple with, is this the right thing to do?
Ben loved being in unauthorized places. If a door said closed to the public or anything like that, he was on the other side of that door. So, I think that that's just what photographers are. They're after the story, print or photojournalists. So I don't know that I've got an answer to that. All I know is that Ben is one of the very few photographers who owns the copyright to his photography. I have the copyright to all of these. Paul Schutzer, for example, who shot for Life magazine, was staff. He does not own, he never owned the, somebody like Charlie Moore, who shot for Black Star, owns the copyright. So the answer, the reason why you have these photographs is because Ben owned the copyright, and all of those photographs, whether they were published or not, belonged to him. So they ended up here. Did I answer that? I don't know if
I think one of the
it.
things David, I don't want to speak for you. You can correct me, please, but when you said ethical issues, because I know this comes up frequently with photojournalists that we talk with.
Eddie Adams.
Eddie Adams, who took the famous photograph Saigon Execution. That's probably one of the most famous photographs of taken in any kind of war or anything. grappled with ethical issues of that photograph his whole life, actually.
Yeah.
He often said that I killed two people with that photograph. I killed General Lone, who shot him, and as well as the Viet Cong who was shot.
Yeah.
And so this is the whole ethical issue about, which comes up frequently. We have a program.
If Ben ever had a situation like that, I don't recall it. I just know that all of those guys, not just Ben, but they were after the story and after the photo. And I don't know. I have never found anything in Ben's files that, was a photograph that gave me pause.
Well, as a follow-up, perhaps, if I may, when he's going to a dangerous area, how does he evaluate, is the photograph worth putting my life on the line, the situation you described and other things? He's not a soldier, he's not required to be there.
In other words, is a photograph worth dying for?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When I think of Ben was a deep sea diver. He was diving to depths that maybe he shouldn't have. I'm thinking of all kinds of situations, that were dangerous. I don't think that I don't remember him ever shying away from a dangerous situation. I mean, covering the civil rights was dangerous, especially for a Southern boy. I mean, Charlie's told you those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some photographers, of course, died taking photographs, and especially in Vietnam. So, right back here.
So prior to donating all of these photographs, did you?
We had a mic there. We can. Yeah.
Prior to donating all these photographs, did you, as a couple or whatever, do cataloging and indexing and recording of all of what you have here, or is it just the boxes full of pictures and leave it to the Briscoe Center to figure out?
Well, okay. That's a really good question, because when this copyright issue came up, and that was around 72, 73, somewhere around there, Time Magazine started just putting all of the transparencies, everything that they had in these huge tea chests. And so these tea chests would arrive at the house, and they were just full of photographs of everything. And they sat around for a while, and I sharply suggested that Ben start dealing with it. And so I'm proud to say that I hired a young woman who had some, knowledge and ability to do this sort of thing, and she started the cataloging. And when Ben saw what could be done, putting all the transparencies and captioning and so on, I think Ben's archive was in pretty good shape.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I didn't physically do it, but I think you'll corroborate this. Photographers are pretty careless.
Oh, absolutely. I know we have a couple of obsessive, compulsive types who took photographs and everything's perfect, okay? But that's absolutely not the normal case. And I won't name the photographer, a very famous Pulitzer Prize winning photographer whose archive we have. And I was visiting with him in L.A., and he was living in a motel there in L.A., and we were talking about his archive. He wanted to do something in his archive. And I said, well, could I look at it? And I said, yeah, of course, everything. So we went out. He said, let's go out in the parking lot. He opened up the back trunk of his car, and it was full of color transparencies and shoe boxes, any kind of box he could get it in. And it was just like, taking a drawer and dumping it into the box.
Yeah, that's what they did at Time Life. Those tea chests were as big as this table, and they were just thrown in there. And the other thing that happened, of course, and a lot of photographs disappeared this way. I think that Twiggy negatives disappeared for this reason, because these things were just put into drawers, anybody, absolutely anybody, could open those drawers and take prints, take transparencies, negatives, whatever they wanted. So a lot of stuff disappeared that
Mainly
way.
prints, and we
Yeah,
know
mainly
of some
prints.
prints that have been on the auction market that probably came out that way. Someone got them out, because you can't really sell negatives. They don't have any market value, but the prints do, of course. The thing is that the best favor that Time Life and Newsweek and many of the magazines did for us, for historians, was they decided, their accountants talked them into that they shouldn't be paying the fringe benefits of these photographers, as they wouldn't, that they should just be on an independent contract and to get assignments, and they wouldn't have to pay for their medical insurance and all this other stuff. Well, in exchange for that, for losing their benefits, most of these photographers then got the right to keep their copyright.
Yeah.
So a large number of photographers, like Dirk Halstead, for example, owned all the rights to his,
Yeah,
and
he
we
did.
have that archive too.
Yeah.
So that has saved a lot of photographs, because some of the, and I'm always blaming the accountants. This is tax time, so I want to. The accountants made the decisions at the magazines, what they were going to keep and what they wouldn't. They never talked to the editorial side of the publication. And for example, and the accountants would decide to get rid of these archives, these photo archives. And for example, the Washington Post, their entire archive documenting Watergate was destroyed. It was they were completely destroyed. They don't exist. And the accounting office is the one that decided to do that without even checking with the editorial staff or anyone else. That's wonderful that I know we have several other photographers who Time Life sent their photographs back to them.
Yeah,
That way.
and from the very beginning, Henry Luce been a staff photographer, but kept him as there's a word for it.
Independent.
Yeah, independent. So from the very beginning of Ben's career, so he owned every single image. Some of them, like Bill Epridge and so on, who's they only own some of them. The other thing, and as Don said, the whole photographic library for the Herald Tribune and L.A. ended up in a landfill. Yeah. And all of those photographers, when Microsoft was buying up archives back in the early 80s, whenever it was, those images were digitized, but then many of them lost, and the photographs themselves ended up in a landfill.
Yeah, well, that's when the digital craze came in, everyone was deciding that they could save a lot of storage space. I'm talking about the businesses. I'm talking about that you could just digitize all of them and then toss all of the analog material away. Now we've got bit rot and things like that. The digital images are going away, and they don't have a real long future. It's one of the reasons why we focus on collecting analog archives, because that's, it's not we know where they are, we know how to store them, we know how to handle them, and this sort of thing. So digital photography is a whole different issue here with this thing. Another question? Yeah, Ben.
I'm curious as to what you think. If Ben were alive today in good health and could choose his own assignments, what do you think he would be up to?
Ben today, he'd be doing. He was taking pictures up until the day he passed away. I mean, he was. He'd be freelance doing something. He left. Let's see now. How old was he? He worked for Time Life, late into his career. If he were alive now, he'd be doing the same thing.
You don't think
I'm
the Trump
sure, but-
administration would be a perfect place for him to be taking pictures? Just saying, just saying. Who else? Right here, yeah.
For the picture of Harper Lee, was that a personal photograph or did he take that for publication?
Which one?
Which
Harper
one?
Lee. Harper Lee.
Harper Lee.
Oh, Harper Lee.
That was in Time
question.
magazine. She had. That was when. Kill a Mockingbird had just come out. So Ben photographed her for the magazine. But then there were a lot of other photographs that he did that ended up in Time, but they weren't actually assigned.
Okay, well, thank you, Kathryn.
Yeah, thank
Let's
you.
give her a round of applause.